In this video, we're going to take a look at replacing and removing this power steering line from the Nissan D22 Frontier. We're going to replace this power steering line with a genuine dealer item power steering line with a part number 49710/9Z400. Detachment of these two flare fitting lines from the power steering box will be accomplished first, then detachment of that power steering reserve return hose will then be made. Detaching of the power steering hydraulic pump Banjo bolt will also be accomplished, and releasing this bracket from the frame rail and detaching this 12mm bolt. A look at the newly designed bracket for mounting the power steering line to the frame rail does not feature that 12mm bolt. We will then detach these two 10mm bolts from below the radiator support on the crossmember support for the frame rail and releasing this power steering hydraulic line from the vehicle. Let's begin the removal of the hydraulic line by detaching this splash guard from the inner wheel well to reveal the hydraulic line from the steering box. In the video description, there is a video link showing how to remove this steering box for a pitman arm seal replacement. Removal of the hydraulic line flare fitting will become most difficult with common tool. It is highly recommended that a tool of the appropriate size, like this line wrench, be fitted onto the fitting, making sure that the line wrench does not encounter any obstacle like the aluminum casting on the power steering box. You will notice that aluminum casting will become an obstacle or obstructing the wrench from placing onto the flare fitting. Here you will notice the resistance of the wrench against that casting, preventing it from fitting properly to the fitting, which may cause damage to occur. The tool perfectly fitted to the flare nut, it is much easier for wrenching off and reposition appropriately so it does not obstruct with the aluminum casting. There is 3 areas where you're most likely to get an oil leak from, and one of those will be this pitman arm seal. Another one will be that crankshaft rear main seal, and the third one will be from the power steering high pressure line. Like you see here, the oil is already saturating and leaking down onto the floor. A 17mm line wrench to remove the low pressure side line. This line fitting will not encounter any obstacle during releasing from the steering box. It will also require removal of this rock guard with its 10mm bolt and circular ratchet. So what I want to show you here is that crankshaft rear main seal continued to leak even though we replaced it approximately 3 months ago. This leak just began to appear, and the reasoning it's happening is because we have used a aftermarket seal for the replacement and not the Nissan factory seal. So this you should be aware of and make sure when you are replacing the crankshaft rear main seal to use a genuine dealer parts. In the video description, there is a link to show how to remove the engine for replacement of the crankshaft rear main seal and the transmission, torque converter, front pump seal. To reduce the likeliness of oil contaminating in areas where it's not recommended, we must clean this area. Here we can see from the leak on the power steering line next to the power steering pump, the oil is starting to saturate this splash guard, which will most likely leak into this idler arm, causing it to fail. Also, if the power steering oil is to contaminate these control arm bushing, it will cause the vehicle to become unaligned and most likely destroy the upper control arm bushing. So now you can get a good look at where the power steering is fixed to the frame rail, and you'll notice that that leak is coming from right here. So if the oil leak was coming from the reservoir return hose, that oil will leak down this line and continue on down to the lowest spot and start dripping on the floor in that area. That will be this power steering return line making its way down to the steel line onto the frame rail. All these areas must be cleaned with some degreaser, preferably the purple blaster, to help reduce the likeliness of slipping with the tool and hurting yourself. We want to remove this return hose for the power steering first by detaching it from the reservoir. Care must be taken when disconnecting this hose, because the likeliness of breaking the spout on the bottom of the reserve tank can become reality. The catch can or the oil will now be placed below this area for containing the spilled oil. Here, when we take a look inside this hose, you see what's going on? Basically, inside the hose is becoming a rupture, and all the pieces are becoming into the pump. Disconnection of the hydraulic pump oil inlet hose is also important for internal inspection. Flushing the oil from the hydraulic system is most important, and inspection for foreign contaminant. Now the hose will be disconnected from the power steering pump, and in the course of doing so, we'll most likely remove the reservoir during the course of messing with the power steering. Your hand might most likely come in contact with this plug, and it will simply break off. This is plastic. This is what makes these cars garbage. You might remember this hose from the previous video that we used for replacing this power steering line. Notice that liner in there is still in good condition, that gray liner. Before this banjo bolt can be removed from the power steering hydraulic pump, a 24mm 6-point half-inch drive socket must be used with a half-inch drive ratchet. You do not want to use a 3/8 drive on this banjo bolt since of its socket size. So we do not have a half-inch drive extension because the people that associate around us are most likely thieves, or we're simply misplacing the tools by magic. So we have to do it the hard way. And this part is where I want to tell you that you should never allow friends around your tools, because they are the ones who are going to thief that tool. And they're not going to really use it, because if they use it, you're going to see when they use it and you're going to be able to crack them in the face. So they're most likely going to sell these tools and buy what they want. This is where you're going to have to become creative, like using a pipe onto the end of the ratchet for increasing its leverage and reducing the effort of releasing the bolt. So you can see you're having problems here switching the ratchet, because not even the ratchet is perfect. So that's why you stay away from friends when you're doing this work, because you're going to make a lot of money also. You don't want to spend those money on your friends. You want to find yourself a nice girl. Friends are your enemy, frenemy. Now that we're removing this washer, or should I say this banjo bolt, losing my tools will make you confused. We have to make sure we keep these two copper washers. It's not recommended that these copper washers be reused. It is always best to replace them with new ones. Now is the best time for disconnecting this power steering sensor. Here you'll notice this ABS cable wire is attached, securing itself to the power steering bracket that mounts to the frame. It is very important that this line be removed, this wire removed perfectly, and not just rip it apart like some mechanic will do. Most mechanic would rather yank on this wire, ripping that clip and busting it apart, leaving this wire so it could shake like this during operation of the vehicle, causing it to become destroyed. Next thing you know, the ABS light turns on and you have to bring the vehicle back to that same mechanic who created this problem so he could get your money. Yep, folks, you have to believe me. When I used to work in a mechanic shop, the bosses always wanted me to do things like that so he could make money. And then he tells you, don't worry. Then he tells you, don't worry, you're going to make commission. Let's make money, man. It's the American way. That's why I tell you, American pride is the greatest fraud. American pride is the greatest fraud. So if you're poor and you don't have any brains, Crime Pay USA is the place for you. Just don't go to jail, because that's where you're going to become an anti-man and you might never fix cars again. Because this here is not pleasure. You gotta love pain. When you love pain, life is the sweetest part. So I must talk to you like this, because we are people, and doing what's right by reality is best. Now, the people that you have to look out for that are the most nicest thieves are Guyanese. With the right side power steering line completely removed, we will now have to detach two 10mm bolts from the motor radiator support that anchors the line of the cross member to the frame rail. So this is a machine thread, and it's not a sheet metal bolt, so we have to be careful when inserting this, making sure we don't strip the threads. Here we have another one. So you see what the oil will do to your hand if you don't clean it. It will just simply cause a slippery condition. You're not going to be able to hold the socket. Sometimes your hands could slip off the tool and you could bust your knuckles. So let's get this out of the way. The first side that we want to bring down, obviously, is the side on the steering box. Once that side is down, then we will have to maneuver this bracket around this frame rail. So what's going to have to be done here is this bolt in the center is going to have to be removed to separate these two brackets that hold the two lines together for the line to pass down. With a 12mm 6-point quarter-inch drive socket and ratchet, we will now remove this bolt that is the power steering line removed. This is the bracket that we just detached. So we're not going to reuse any of this. Let's get ready and install the new power steering line with its sensor and bracket. So this is what we must avoid. Always use a catch can for catching the large sum of oil, and cardboard on the floor for absorbing that oil before it leaches into the ground. And you always want to make sure you're working on a concrete floor, not sand, mud, or soil.